This is Peter Nicolino with WRHU, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, as well as former Director of Legislative Affairs Phil Schrilio. My first question is for you, Mr. Fleischer. During the panel discussion, you mentioned Andy Beshear, and you called him the nation's most popular governor. Beshear is a Democrat in the southern state of Kentucky. What has made him so likable to voters, and are there any other candidates who could possibly achieve that level of popularity?
He's done in Kentucky basically what Mitt Romney did when Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts and was a popular governor. He criticizes people in his own party. So Andy Beshear, as a Democrat in red Kentucky, regularly criticizes Democrats, helping him to stand out and be different and not get labeled a liberal and not get labeled pro-Biden. That's the only way to survive in Kentucky. So I can't say Kentucky was a big win for Democrats when the Democrat governor ran against the Democratic Party.
Given your experience in communication and public relations, what advice do you have for students or young people in effectively communicating their messaging to the public in a way that supports democracy?
The best way is to vote. Young people voting in huge numbers is the best way for people to take young voters seriously and pay attention to them. And that's always the proven way to do it. There's no better way.
Over the last two elections, the divide between parties seems to grow every day. How can we bridge the political divide and foster a more inclusive and bipartisan approach to the 2024 election and the future of democracy?
First off, in terms of style and decorum, I am very old school. I want people who can get along, work with each other, even if you disagree on something. But I don't mind differences of opinion in a powerful way between the two parties. It is entirely legitimate for one party to say, these are the answers, and the other party say, no, these are the answers. And then you let the public settle it. You don't necessarily have to squish out and say, oh, really? Oh, okay, I'll change everything I believe in to meet you halfway. Sometimes what you have to do is just put it to the voters and let which idea wins. The message we've gotten from voters in the last 10 to 15 years is we're a closely divided country. We're not ready yet to invest power in any one party or the other for any long-term period of time.
You mentioned the possibility of President Biden skipping the presidential debates as a way to not stoop to Trump's level and establish not sharing a stage with him. Do you think voters would look at that positively, and would it help President Biden?
Some Democrats will say, absolutely not. Why would you get on stage with that man? A lot of Republicans and probably some independents are going to say, does this prove he's too old?
Earlier today, you mentioned the trends of young voters saying, hey, let's give somebody else a shot. And you used the football's backup quarterback as an example. Who's the presidential candidate version of the backup quarterback in this year's election?
There isn't one. That's the thing. It's an abstract. It's an abstract ideal. Wouldn't it be great if someone else could emerge? But that's different than a football team where there actually is a specific backup quarterback. Here, it's just whoever someone could, the creation they could have in their mind.
How can we address concerns about election integrity? Because after the 2020 election, there's been so much debate. How can we ensure that the 2024 election is perceived as a fair and secure voting period?
The Electoral Count Act changes is very, very important to that. I think in a lot of jurisdictions, they're beefing up some of their election mechanisms, and I think a lot of it is awareness. What happened in 2020, no one ever thought would happen. Well, now we know it could happen, and so people are more tuned to it.
What do you see as the most important issues that will influence voters' decisions in the 2024 elections, and how might that impact the democratic process?
I don't see one right now. The abortion issue is so intensely personal to people. There's no other issue I can think of right now that's sort of like that.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen more mass shootings than ever before in American history. How come that has not had much of an effect on voting as much as something like abortion? Why have school and mass shootings not had the effect on the public we thought it would?
It's an excellent question. There are only a handful of issues that reach the point where people will vote on that issue. On guns, people have voted on that issue, but they voted on it to have more guns and against any restrictions on guns. That's been the motivating issue. In terms of other people who want fewer guns or want gun measures, there haven't been a critical mass of people who that was the defining issue.
Gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak with me today. This has been Peter Nicolino, WRHU.